What I would love to see is a whole shift of mindset. People seeing through Northern women as not limited in ambition, that are not limited in leadership, that are not limited in innovation. So I'd love to see that mindset shift happens completely, and it can only happen when there is a lot of inclusion. And that this current generation, whether it's Gen Z or Gen Alpha, are getting technology without challenges, without too much barriers, especially sociocultural norms that are holding a lot of our people back.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Roots and Algorithms. My name is Amina. I'm the host and founder of this podcast, the podcast where we explore the intersection of identity, culture, and technology through the stories of incredible women shaping the future. Today's episode is a very special one because we're joined by someone whose work is quietly but powerfully influencing Nigeria's digital transformation journey. Our guest is Iklima Musa Salihu. She is the Special Assistant to the Director General of the National Information Technology Development Agency. She has played major roles in innovation, women empowerment, youth empowerment, digital inclusion, and transformation in Nigeria's tech ecosystem. Welcome to Roots and Algorithms, Iklima.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to a very productive engagement.
We're so excited to have you here. I've genuinely been looking forward to this conversation. If you weren't working in tech, what do you think you would be doing right now?
Um, First of all, I will say that Iklima has been a very curious and ambitious person ever since I was growing up, and also principled at the same time. And so those values really shaped me and made me who I am today. I would say that if I happen not to find myself in tech, I'll definitely find myself in the medical field. And I'll probably be a physiotherapist, consulting, either doing physiotherapy or maybe a gynecologist. But that was another angle that I was actually looking at.
Okay. That is interesting. I actually wasn't expecting you to say that, but that says a lot because I mean, you're already doing the work that you would have been doing in the medical field, which is helping people, empowering people, so it's almost similar. Now, let's go back to where it all started, right? Can you tell us who was young Iklima growing up and what kind of environment shaped the way you are today?
So like I said earlier, she's been a tough kid. That's who Iklima has been from day one. I've set a very high standard for myself. I've been very ambitious. I'm always curious. And I've always been this kid that has been driven by passion and enthusiasm to get things done. And so this were the things that shaped my childhood. And also the environment that I grew up in is an environment of highly educated people. But I'll tell you something that really shaped me, and who did that, and which is my mom. My mom is a very strong and courageous woman that showed courage in the face of adversity. And growing up with a woman like that really made me see life from a whole different perspective. A woman who lost her husband at the age of 23, didn't go to school. She just had her secondary school certificate, but picked up herself very well, went to school from that time, set up a business, who is very successful today. A woman that refused to let circumstances define the future of her children and also herself and every other person around her. A woman that is driven by impact, a woman that wants to make changes in the lives of people. So growing up with someone like that sparked a lot early enough in my life, and that shaped who Iklima is today.
Wow, very fascinating. And this is a powerful way to start the episode because, I mean, this podcast, it's about, empowering women. And to see that you actually grew up with someone who is a powerhouse, it's amazing because it shows how early identity shapes confidence because it has truly, truly made you into the amazing woman that you are today. I love that because what it shows that is before the algorithm, there's always a story, there's always a foundation. Now, moving further to your education, you studied information technology in Malaysia. I know you said you've always been curious, but at what point did you realize that tech for you was not just an interest, go to school, get a job, but it was something that you wanted to build a career around?
So I'd say that I went to school in 2009, and at the time was when the internet started booming and things started becoming very much deeply rooted in tech. And I remember days that I'd spend some time surfing the internet. And whenever I go and I prompt Google and it gives me multiple responses, I can't but imagine what's happening behind doors. So, who is Google? I began to ask questions like that. And so when I checked online, also they said it was based in US, and all that. And I couldn't but also imagine how I'm able to do these things. And sometime around 2009, when the opportunity came, I saw information technology and I was really fascinated by that. And that was how I myself into tech.
It's great to hear that you've always wanted to be in tech because 2009, that wasn't a time where, tech was the first point of contact for women, probably wanted to be a, doctor, lawyer, engineer. Moving now to breaking into the industry, you've been in the corporate world for almost a decade now, working across private sector, public sector, from network operations to innovation to strategy. What was your early career journey like entering the industry? Did you have to break any barriers, especially as a woman going into the tech space?
That's really interesting because it brought back a lot of memories now. I'd say that my experiences has been quite diverse, from private sector to technical roles to operations to strategy to innovation, ecosystem building, and even partnerships. And when I started, I remember I just had a baby who was less than 3 months. And when I resumed work, of course, I was still looking like a pregnant woman. And I think one of the hardest thing for me was having the baby without the right structures put in place in that environment. And that's because when these things are built, especially in tech, they're not built with inclusion and even the thought of women around. And so that was a lot of challenge for me. I tried to, the first day I resumed work, I went with the baby and the nanny, and I tried to look for a place for them, and they were like, "There isn't any place." And I'm like, "Okay, if they could stay in the mosque," but unfortunately, there wasn't even a mosque there, and the only option we had was the rooftop. And at some point, I had to leave her home. I would come to office in the morning a little bit earlier. And also, another issue was the fact that they didn't have any inclusion policy in place. So I proposed and said if there was a way I could resume a little bit late and close earlier. Unfortunately, there was no policy like that in place. And that was an issue, which at some points I had to push really, really hard and made them come up with a policy that enabled me to do that, which was just an hour late and closing an hour earlier. And so I had that leverage, which then helped me to be able to balance that life, get home during break time, feed the baby, and come back to office on time. I'd say that it wasn't an easy journey, but with passion, purpose, and also with drive and making sure that if you're able to put this in place, one thing I told myself at the time was if I get this right, it has opened doors and opportunities for every other lady to be able to balance her work and that. So that really worked. And if I look back at that, it is something that I am quite proud of today.
Yeah. I hear you. Passion, purpose, and drive. And I will say, even though between then and now, there has been a lot of changes, but the conversation still needs to keep going on because inclusion is, I mean, a lot of times it's good on paper, but in practice, it's not really the case. There are some women that might still be experiencing what you experience, but I'm glad that you were able to put your foot down and realize that it really wasn't just about you, right? And it's such an amazing thing. So in those times where you had a baby, you just resumed work, was there ever a time where you felt like, did you even want to be there? Maybe leave the job or at least take time off and come back when your baby was older? And what did that look like for you if that was the case?
Absolutely. I've thought about that more than 100 times, and every single day I get ready to go to work, I thought about quitting. But like I said, I think purpose is what drives everything. When you are clear on absolutely what you want, you handle challenges very differently. And because I understood and really wanted to do something myself to make impact, I didn't let that put me down, but I fought through and ensured that I delivered the right results. One of the things I noticed at the time was the fact that there wasn't a lot of representation of women in managerial position. And I thought that if at all there was a woman there, the person would have understood and it would have resonated with the company that we need to put sort of a policy or even an infrastructure or something together that would just enable women coming with their full selves while ensuring that we accommodate their needs at the same time. So these were some of the thoughts that were driving me each day. And I always envisage myself in a position like that, on the managerial position, that I had the power to make decisions. That was what really just kept me going.
Yeah, so now moving on to your current work at NIDA, you do a lot of work on strategies, you do a lot of initiatives, you shape policies, you shape programs that are impacting millions of Nigerians. For someone listening to this who may not fully understand that scale of work happening at that level, can you tell us something about maybe the projects that you've done that you're proud of so that our listeners can understand how that kind of strategy translates into real impact for Nigerians?
So, one thing that I am very proud of and lucky in a way to do is the fact that I am able to work in a place that affects people at scale. I'm able to do things that drive digital literacy, digital transformation, innovation, talent development, partnerships, and even frameworks that shape Nigeria's digital future. And when I got the opportunity, the first thing I did was to be able to translate the vision into tangible results. And that was one of the things I've done, is the strategic roadmap and action plan of NITA, which was implemented, and huge successes were recorded at the end of the strategy. So I was able to understand the environment when I got there, and I understood that a lot needs to be put in place. One is to ensure that the people who are the primary stakeholders that will drive the achievement of the vision are well positioned to do that. They have the right mindset for that to happen. And secondly, to renew our social contracts with people outside the agency, people that our strategies affect, our framework, our standards, and every other document that comes out of NIDA. But for that to happen, we needed to have a document that is not just a written document that catches dust on the shelf, but a document that is implementable, a document that is very simple, concise, and just tells us where we're headed to. And that has translated to a lot of opportunities for Nigeria, startup growth, jobs, skills, access, and even real things that touches everyday lives.
Like I spoke at the beginning of the episode, quietly but powerfully, I hear a lot of things: digital literacy, measurable impact, because a lot of times people only see the headlines. They don't really understand the strategy and the execution behind it. But I love that you made mention of the talents that your work has been able to develop, the tangible results that you've been able to produce from your work, which is really, really amazing. As a woman in the industry, because bringing us back now to the podcast, Roots and Algorithms is focusing on women in tech and their stories, because the work that you do for digital inclusion, especially when it comes to bridging Nigeria's gender gap, as an advocate, as a volunteer, as a speaker on platforms. I know you are the honorary chair for TechBridge Foundation for her. And I'm sure you have come across a lot of women that you just maybe spoken to or mentored. Can you tell us what are some barriers women and girls still face accessing these digital opportunities?
Okay, so I'll take us back a little bit before we get there as to how we even got to understand there was a huge and a persistent gap in terms of use and access to digital technology, which is the gender digital divide that exists in Nigeria and Africa at large. And so when I was doing my work, at some point, I was developing a lot of strategies. But something kept on coming to my desk. Whenever there is any request that comes in on women, it comes. It was an angle I never looked at. Although I've had this drive for women already, but I never knew and I never noticed that it's been a male dominated sector to that extent. And so I started to attend events and I started to listen. And there was a day I went for this particular event and they were talking about the numbers. And when I looked at it, I just saw very few women around. And then I began to notice these things, even at office. Sometimes I'm the only woman in the meeting, sometimes just two in the meeting of 50 or even 100.
Wow.
I was like, this is really, really prominent. And so I started to dig very deeply into what the issues are. I started to work with the special duties unit of the agency and thought that we should come up with something. And when we did that, we understood that there were some very structural and behavioral barriers that have existed for years. Some of the barriers we saw is access, is skills, is mentorship, is even social investment. It's confidence level, it's affordability, it's infrastructure. And I could go on and on and on. And from that, I came up with the National Gender Digital Inclusion Strategy, which is currently being implemented. But also out of passion and the drive to ensure that this thing happens, I thought that it might be a good idea to establish an organization that should be our way of giving back to the society. And that's how they conceptualized the Technology Bridge Foundation for Women and Girls,
Wow.
which is focusing on empowering women, initially just women from the northern region. And that was also based on what we saw. We saw the numbers and we saw the issues
Absolutely.
were a lot more on the northern side. But we had to expand because our vision grew beyond the northern region to Africa. And so we're focusing, ensuring that we build the right bridges for our girls. And also we bridge futures and ensuring that these barriers are completely overcome to ensure that women and girls have the right skills and access to infrastructure to thrive.
First of all, congratulations on the strategy and thank you for all the work that you're doing with the foundation. It is really, really fascinating, to see it go from something that is just focused at a particular region to going even beyond the country. And to also touch on the barriers, like you said, there are internal barriers, of course. There are also external barriers, like you made mention the society, the community. Earlier, you did mention representation. I will say that is one of the key barriers because it takes a lot of drive, a lot of passion for you to actually see that there is nobody like you at the place that you want to be and to still continue. So just a follow-up question to that, you did mention how TechBridge Foundation has expanded beyond just the northern region of Nigeria to even Africa. Can you tell us what do you think going forward needs to change beyond just teaching? Because yes, digital skills is important, but beyond just teaching women these digital skills, what else do you think needs to be done to further bridge the gap that is existing in the tech ecosystem?
Okay, I'm happy you asked that because there is this push approach that is out there that a lot of people don't actually understand the kind of interventions they should give to different regions. And I'd say that it is not as one size fits all. Beyond just giving digital skills, we need access to devices, access to funding, access to mentorships, access to female focused networks, access to leadership spaces, and even opportunity. Because skills alone are not enough if the ecosystem remains inaccessible. So I would say that these things has to be put in place for us to ensure that we create a burgeoning ecosystem for our girls and even a safer space for our girls to play and ensure that representation happens.
I'm really glad you brought up access to leadership because you are in a leadership position in the tech space. So my question to you is, there are a lot of stereotypes actually that exist, women in tech, northern women in tech. So in 5 to 10 years from now, as a woman who is currently occupying leadership position, what changes would you love to see for northern women in tech?
So, what I would love to see is a whole shift of mindset, and that would entail people seeing through Northern women as not limited in ambition, not limited in leadership, that are not limited in innovation. I'd remember an episode where I spoke to one of my coaches and I said, I am into tech, and the person couldn't believe it. Obviously, because I'm from North. So I'd love to see that mindset shift happens completely. And it can only happen when there is a lot of inclusion. And that's this current generation are getting technology without challenges, without too much barriers, especially sociocultural norms that are holding a lot of our people back. So I'd love to see these things happen.
Okay, mindset shift, inclusion, and access without barriers. Now, Iklima, you do a lot of things for the ecosystem. You're SEA strategic partnership, you volunteer, you mentor, you lead, you coach. So how are you able to make all of that work? Because on paper or just in reality, people are like, oh, you can't have it all. If you attempt it, you'll crash. So how are you able to keep up with all of these things so that the next girl listening that thinks, oh, I still want to have my life, have my family, do this, doesn't think it's impossible and can also learn a thing or two from how you do it to make it work for her?
So for me, I would say everything starts and ends with you. And when I talk about you, I'm talking about the belief that you have in yourself and the mindset that you always wake up with. I believe that this is what I can do. I already have established my purpose and I've gotten my calling. And I know this is an area that is impacting a lot of lives. I'm not saying that sometimes you don't get burnt out or you don't get tired or even exhausted. There are days that you wake up very depleted, but the purpose keeps driving you. So continue to have that purpose at heart. Secondly, believe in yourself. I could remember my mentor speaking to me when I was about to translate the launch strategy into an action plan. And he's like, Iklima, you've got a lot to do. And you're handling a very key organization that whatever you do will translate into touching the lives of the people. So I want you to have that at heart. Secondly, I want you to believe in yourself. If you do not believe in yourself, you cannot make things happen. So these were some of the things that kept me moving, even at times of challenges or difficulties. It just didn't let me lose focus and sight of where I want things to be.
Okay. So I will say it's more about internal rather than work-life balance. But for you, it's just if you believe it, basically you can do it. And you will find time for it, which I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with. From the beginning, you spoke about all your thought was, the women that will come after you. So now the future of, Northern women in tech, the future of young women in tech, we have a lot of young women today that are trying to navigate, find their footing. What is one thing young women in tech struggle with, and what advice you would give them on how to navigate?
I think the major thing that women in tech or even girls that are trying to get into tech are really struggling with is confidence. Secondly, I would say it's comparison. And thirdly, is waiting to be ready. Because they don't have confidence, all these things can never be put in place. So I would say that we need to build the right confidence and we don't have to wait for the perfect time for things to happen. So for you to be able to navigate all the barriers and all the challenges in tech, you need to look up to somebody. Also, mentorship is important. You don't have to be speaking to anybody before the person becomes your mentor. I have a lot of mentors that don't even know I follow them and I look closely into what they do. So you need to have that. And also you need to start, you need to learn, you need to engage, you need to have the right conversations with the right people. Ask the right questions also. Go online. There are lots of courses online you could do at no cost. Some of them are free or even YouTube. Learn, build skills from there. Seek advice and give yourself permission to grow.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that because, of course, it builds up to, we started with representation, then we started with access, then we added up support, and now we're adding up confidence. But you did mention comparison. I didn't quite get. So when you say comparison, is it like a barrier or is it how to navigate the barriers? So can you touch more on that?
So I think because we don't have a lot of women that we look up to, especially in tech in leadership positions, there is a lot of comparison with the other gender. And when you hear yourself with them, that is when cultural norms begin to come in, patriarchal norms begins to play. And you then begin to look at yourself like someone that isn't capable to get to that level. So even if you will compare, you should look up to role models that have set a very good example online that you could, not even online, everywhere that you could look up to. And you don't necessarily have to compare yourself with anybody. You could be at your best. So you don't have to compare yourself with anybody. You need to understand that things work out for people at different times. What I said in terms of belief, and you believe in yourself, you already have a purpose, you know where you're headed to. Comparison wouldn't play a negative role in your life.
That is such a beautiful way to put it because at the end of the day, again, it's all about representation, all about inclusion. We need to just continue having these conversations to ensure that what we're talking about is actually implemented because representation alone is key to ensuring that the gender gap is bridged. We have more women in tech, we have more Northern women in tech. Now, bringing it back to you, Iklima, as a northern woman in tech, especially in leadership position, you find yourself in an ecosystem that is male dominated and also Western centric. So, how do you ensure your northern identity stays part of your professional brand?
Northern identity is always with me everywhere I go. And that's because it's something that is deeply ingrained in me, which is why TechBridge was birthed. So for everywhere I go, that identity plays out. And sometimes people speculate and think where I'm from. Some people think I'm probably from Edo, from Kogi. But I mean, I have not that heart. I see through things. As soon as I get into those rooms, I represent North by default. And that's because of the work I've done in North. I've seen the numbers played out. I've seen what the issues are. I am able to represent the North, not by the way that I speak, not by my accent, not by my dressing.
And that's such a, you know, beautiful way to stay grounded to your values and stay grounded to your northern identity. Now, looking towards the future, you are a powerhouse. You have all of these titles, achievements, accolades. When people look back, say 20 years from now, 30 years from now, what would you like people to think? Oh, they hear the name Iklima Musa Salihu. What would you like the world to think?
Interesting. So beyond the title, I would simply say that I'd love to be remembered as this person that made a huge change for us. This is the woman that saw that Africa has just 28% of IT professionals or even less, and did implement policies, activities that ensured they were at the level of 60 to 70%. I would love for it to be my legacy to look back and see the number of people that I have impacted and created opportunities for in Africa and the world at large. And in terms of the campaigns I've been doing for inclusion to be heard, even in places that I have never stepped my foot at, and that's by merely hearing, for instance, this podcast, this is going to create a lot of changes. And that's why at TBF, we've been implementing a lot of programs that has to do with advocacy, awareness, and mentorship. Just a few weeks ago, we did the TechBridge Her Voice, where we visited a government school and spoke to around 70 students there, made them understand that tech is for all of us and that they could begin to build their interest on that. The questions we got were amazing. A lot of them were asking, so where do I start from? Oh, I love AI. And because of the revolution that is happening now, they know they love AI. They heard about AI, but they don't even know where to start from. I couldn't but imagine the number of lives out of that 80 students we spoke to that would be touched by this, that would eventually get into tech because some people visited them in school and spoke to them about tech, and that's why they are tech professionals and have built talent in cybersecurity, in AI and machine learning, in cloud computing, in blockchain, and the list will be endless. So these are things that I'll be very glad and happy to see.
That is such a beautiful vision. I know I spoke about 10, 20, 30 years from now, but you are already building that future. You are already putting in the work. And I'm sure, like, it's good you mentioned this podcast because that is actually why the podcast exists to make the stories of amazing women like yourself timeless so that stories of women like you goes to places that you've never even stepped into, but someone will hear it and someone will remember your name. Ichilima, now it's this is not the end of the podcast because this conversation has been everything I hoped it will be and more. You came in here, you gave us strategy, you gave us soul, you gave us substance. I'm sure anyone listening would learn something, be it how to juggle work-life balance, how to believe in themselves, how to know that you have to be confident to actually get to where you want to be. And I think that's exactly who you are, someone who can sit in a room full of policymakers and talk about digital transformation at a scale. And then that doesn't stop you from making sure the girl in a rural community isn't left behind in that conversation. So our signature fire round, it's three questions, one word answer. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind, no thinking, the first question is, what is one word to describe your journey in tech?
Beautiful.
Okay, that's lovely. Emails or meetings?
Meetings.
Okay. I was not expecting that. I don't like
Meetings.
meetings. What does impact mean to you in one word?
Growth.
Okay, that answer tells me a lot already. And I wasn't expecting you to go for meeting, actually. I'm surprised. That is interesting. Now, what I'm taking away from our conversation today is that the future of women in tech, especially northern women in tech, isn't just built in boardrooms. It's actually being built by, people that are even outside the boardrooms because like you made mention, the 80 girls that you spoke to now, those girls will take that knowledge and hopefully build upon it, benefit from it, right? So before I let you go, I want you to take the floor for a moment. Is there anything that you want to point our listeners to? Because some of our listeners, they're just starting out. Some are already in tech, but of course they want to, grow. They want to go beyond the current position they're in. So any project, a resource, a community that they should go to or know about so that they can get to that point that they would want to be.
I would say that honestly, we've lost a lot of, or our levels of attention has really dropped, and we don't like to rate things. A lot of programs out there. People are volunteering to do things, people are investing money to do it. Unfortunately, we don't know about it. And even when we know about it, we don't trust it. And even when we trust it, we don't just want to be part of it. So, what I would say is look out for those opportunities. There are a lot of CSOs, NGOs, government organizations that are churning out programs that will empower you. But because we don't look out for that, I would say that you look not just social media. Social media platforms are important to look out for the programs, but also beyond that. Go to websites, go to any AI tool, prompt the tool, ask where these opportunities are, and get them and begin to apply.
Exactly.
Believe me, if you apply 100, you might be able to get 5. And please don't give up on that.
Okay, you heard that. Don't give up. Don't give up. I like that. I like that. That is an amazing way to end it. Now, Iklima, thank you so much. It has been such a wonderful conversation. And you have been an amazing guest. You dropped a lot of gems. I have learned so many things from this, especially the strategy document that you spoke about. I will definitely go and read up on that one because I haven't. And to everyone else listening, if something in this episode resonated with you, drop your thoughts, your comments, your questions, or even suggestions. What conversations do you want us to have? What stories do you want us to tell? And of course, if you are a Northern woman in tech or you know one whose story deserves to be heard, reach out to Roots and Algorithms. This platform is for you to tell your story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Until next time, this is Roots and Algorithms. Let's change the narrative.